My name is Salman Hamid, and I'm Assistant Professor of Integrated Science and Humanities at Hampshire College.
I'm Kevin Anderson. I teach courses in film and anthropology at the University of Massachusetts, and this is Film Autopsy.
That's it. The music from my dream.
There are whole movements I wrote imagining us meeting again and again in different lives, in different ages.
I can't explain it, but I knew when I opened that door.
A powerful deja vu ran through my bones.
I heard it in a dream. I was in a nightmarish cafe, and the waitresses.
Hello, and welcome to a film autopsy of Cloud Atlas, a new film written and directed by the Wachowski siblings, along with German director Tom Tykwer. A film like this maybe needed 3 writers and directors. It is quite ambitious. It has 6 different storylines taking place at different points in history and in the future, starting in 1849 all the way to 2346. The stories don't necessarily, they overlap thematically, but the characters not so much, although the characters are played by some of the same actors, crossing lines of gender and even race in certain situations, and some of them actually crossing typecasting. I mean, like Tom Hanks, for example, plays kind of a devious doctor in one, and Hugh Grant plays this like road warrior savage in another. So again, it's quite ambitious. I found it very entertaining. It's really beautifully shot. It's rather interesting. Considering that it's based on a novel, I don't know how else you could have done a cinematic treatment of this. It has its shortcomings, but overall, I thought it was very engaging.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think it's really fair to say that this is one of the most ambitious movies that I have seen. Does it work? That's a separate question. But certainly the fact that all these different segments, and these are 6 different stories in many ways, going from 19th century all the way into the 24th century, and a bunch of stops in between, and each one has a distinct style, different storytelling, and usually dealing with a particular issue. So, for example, whether gender equality or whether issues of age differences or other kinds of factors, homosexuality,
race, ethnicity.
Right, and so there are a bunch of these things, but each story takes a particular angle with that. And what I really liked was the distinct visual style it brings to it. And at the same time, I would say that in the book, I haven't read the book, but as far as I know, that it went actually chronological. Here, I don't know if not chronological, whether that was as effective or not. And one of the reasons is because I thought that I was absorbed in a couple of the stories, but then I felt that they didn't go deeper. Okay. So for example, I mean, I think 2 of my favorite segments in that, one was Jim Broadbent, who is put into a home, sort of like
that's
for
one
the
that takes
elderly.
place in about 2012.
That's 2012.
He's a publisher,
I
kind of
thought
on the run.
That segment was really well done. I was really absorbed, partly because of Jim Broadbent also, and it also had an interesting Tom Hanks in the beginning.
And unfortunately, Hugo Weaving as like this nurse Ratchet.
And unfortunately, he was just kind of like forgotten about it. But I thought that was actually really. I mean, I thought that whole segment was beautifully constructed, and so was with the composer, which is set in 1936, where
again Jim Broadbent.
Again Jim Broadbent, who's
that's not featured in that.
Who has a kind of muse or who's a younger composer, and that's where the name Cloud Atlas comes from. Those 2 segments I thought were spectacular, but the rest of them I'm not so sure. Or did you think that overall thematically it worked?
I think that I wasn't as engrossed with all 6 segments equally. Some of them I liked more than others. I liked the one taking place in like the 22nd century in Neo-Soul. It was very somber, very dark, like you thought Blade Runner was dark. This is very dark and creepy, but beautifully shot, and yet with a little kind of glimmer of hope at the heart of it as well. I really like the one taking place in the 1970s, maybe just for the cars and the clothing, when Halle Berry plays Louisa Ray, who's this investigative journalist, and doing an expose on big oil and nuclear power in San Francisco in the 70s. So yeah, I don't think I was as engaged equally with all 6, but I would say that I'm glad it wasn't done chronologically. Because here, I think having them kind of cross over each other in a kind of almost more kaleidoscopic form, I think you can draw out the themes and really appreciate the themes of like transcendence and revolution and resistance a bit more. And starting with one, ending, and it would have played like 6 different films.
So I have to say, actually, Neo Soul, that was the 22nd century. That actually was visually arresting, and that's what reminded me, oh, this is done by the Matrix guys, because I mean, I think that was spectacular. Yeah. But I found. And that's a kind of a problem with The Matrix also. I mean, Matrix is a beautiful film, wonderful film actually, but like, you know, okay, underneath, the message is very simple. And here also it's very simple. Well, it's about transcendence and it's about family, community, whatever, like, you know, linkage. But I think, for that, the movie becomes too broad. It's kind of like reminded me a little bit like Avatar, sort of like, you know, that, well, underneath it, it's a very simple message.
Right, right.
But second, what I thought turned me off to a certain degree. What left overall a bad taste in my mouth was the last segment, which is the sort of like
24th century?
24th century after the fall, where you go and you have the tribal aspect, tribalism, you have the painted faces.
Yeah.
And that was the same trope about nature. And like, you know, then when you go down, I thought that was the weakest segment. And the fact that it was anchored around that, I really thought it was bad.
Okay.
And then I think towards the end when the movie was...
That's the most Ron Howard-esque episode within the film.
And I mean, so first of all, I mean, the whole visual depictions were like really awful. And second, towards the end when it was making these big thematic connections, literally I started laughing out loud because at one point there was a dialogue, and I cannot make this up, actually. The dialogue was, one of the characters says, well, my uncle, or whatever, like an uncle or dad, I forgot, like my uncle was a scientist, but he believed in love. I mean, this is so cliche, like, you know, there are no scientists are human beings, and no scientist doesn't.
Because everybody knows scientists don't believe in love,
I mean,
right?
it was just like such an awful statement. Like, you know, it was, who wrote this dialogue? And this was when things were being put sort of like, you know, as making a big claim. So well, those are some of the things that really turned me off. Overall, it's very ambitious.
It's very ambitious. I think it's very enjoyable, and I think maybe we could go out on saying, I think this is going to get some Academy Award nominations at least.
Yeah.
Also, check it out in the big screen. I know we say that with almost every film we review, but this one, we really, really mean it. See this one on the big screen. It'll be kind of an unforgettable experience.
It's a fantastic experience. You would enjoy it overall, but is it a path-breaking film? I don't think so. I don't think it's another Matrix. I think Matrix was a path-breaking film. This is an ambitious film. Well, some of it worked, some of it didn't, but all credit to people who like tried this. This was a challenging novel to make it into a movie. So yeah, do give it a shot.